Hey friends, I'm Cal Walters, and I'm here to tell you that leadership matters. Leadership is a choice. It's available to all who are willing to learn about it, to pursue it, and to implement it in all of its messiness. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. Let's go make it count. Well, sir, thank you so much for joining the Intentional Leader Podcast today. It's an honor to have you on.
Delighted to be with you. It's my pleasure.
Well, I just want to tell you, I loved your book, Excellence Wins. Thank you so much for taking your life's work, your story, putting it into a book. I encourage everyone to go take a look at it. So many great practical nuggets for leaders that they can go and implement right away. And I wanted just to start by asking about that word excellence. You put it in the title, you talk about it throughout your book. It's used a lot, but you've put it into practice in real life. And I'm just curious, what does that word mean to you? How do you think about excellence?
Okay. Well, let me start this way. Excellence is never an accident. It's always the result of high intent. In other words, I have to set high intent in the things that I'm doing in my life, in my marriage, in the next day. High intent and hard work toward an intent, and keep the intent. Once you set the intent, keep focus, and you will accomplish it. Now, but understand what is excellent. Excellence in a thing, anything, if the thing works well for which it was created. In a human being, it's different. In a human being, if the human being does their very best, there's no perfection in a human being, mind you, does their very best in the functions that they fulfill in their work. Number two, in their work, in their function at home, at work, and does their very best. And helping your wife do the dishes, whatever the function is, do your very best. Number two, as a human being, do your very best relationally, in your relationship with others. And even if that relationship is just passing by somebody and say, "Good morning, sir." Do your very best. Look them in the eye, smile. Number three, do your very best morally and integrity. And number four, to me, and I'm not trying to push anything, don't misunderstand me, to me also means trying to do my very best spiritually. If you put those things together, you talk about excellence as a human being. And of course, if that is true, then I have to try and improve those things ongoing, try to tweak it, try to stop for a moment. Could I do my function better? And that is what I recommend any one of the people that work in an organization, or you're the military, whatever you are. Could I do my functioning, my duties better? Number two, I strongly recommend you question yourself, could I do my relationships better? And of course, morally, and then you tweak it. The problem that people have, they're looking for the big hit somewhere. There's no big hit. Try and tweak yourself. In a few months, you pass mediocrity and you become excellent.
What do you think? You mentioned perfection, because I think some folks can get focused on perfection. What in your view is the difference between those two things, perfection and excellence?
Well, there is no perfection. Similar as that, other than in a higher being, maybe there's no such thing as perfection. So you try to improve, but there is being excellent, or there is being bad, or there is what some people call good average. Average means if you're content, well, I'm a good average. Yeah, come on. Average means you're the bottom of good and the top of bad. That's all. It means nothing. That's mediocrity. Mediocrity is a morass, and people find themselves in that mediocrity, and it seems that we're looking for it today. As a nation, as a society, in many ways, in many companies, is mediocrity, a morass of mediocrity, rather than doing what we are created for as human beings, finding excellence. which is fun, which is rewarding, which is honorable, which is rewarding. There is no reward in the explanations as to why you don't do certain things. There's only reward in accomplishing visions and excellence.
Well,
and again, it's not an accident. It's never an accident. And your destination is no accident. It's the decisions that you make, the decisions for excellence or not.
I love that you said that. The name of this podcast is Intentional Leader, and a big part of being the type of leader that we are trying to coach people to be is by being intentional. Exactly what you talked about. It doesn't happen by accident. It's a daily choice that you make. So I totally agree with that, 100%. And one of the things I love about your book is you give leaders a lot of practical tools. You also just give us a really cool story. So many people know you as the former president, COO of Ritz Carlton. People think Ritz Carlton and this incredible hotel brand, but a lot of folks probably don't know your story. And so I'd like to start there, kind of go back. You grew up in this small German village. And you start the book by talking about, you're coming home from having played soccer, and your neighbor told on you about some news that you had shared at school. So I wonder if you could take us there to how this idea of you getting into the hotel business started for you.
I don't know what started it, but for some reason I was 11 years old when the teacher talked in school about what you're going to do when you grow up, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I want to work in a hotel business. I was in my mind, and I don't know why. Nobody knows why. And particularly unusual because that was not honorable at the time. At that time in Germany, after the war years, you went into a technical shop. It's still pretty honorable in Germany when you say, I want to be a carpenter, I want to be a roofer, these are all, oh yeah. And now, if I would have said, I want to be an engineer, oh my goodness, that would have been the honor of the family. That would have been it. Instead, I come home and my grandfather, literally was terribly embarrassed all his life that I want to be a waiter and a cook and work in a hotel business. But I did. And so, but my parents finally gave up and fighting it and inquired with an agency what to do. They said, find the best hotel in the region for him to start with. They found the best hotel. Unfortunately, it was 100 miles away from home. So with 14, I left home and lived in a dorm room in the hotel and worked there. Why in that hotel? Because it was by far the best hotel in the region. So before I left, my parents said, now, this is a hotel where we could never go. This is a hotel only for very fine ladies and gentlemen. It's true. And when I arrived there, finally, with my mother, the maitre d' told us the same thing. Now, all of you are here to serve them. You're servants, but our guests are very fine ladies and gentlemen. But next, a change of my life happened. I met the maitre d' of the hotel, the guy in charge of food and beverage. And he said, now tomorrow come to work at 7:00. When I say 7, I don't mean 1 minute after 7. I mean 7. And don't come to work. Come here to create excellence in what you're doing. 14 years old, that went right over my head. What is he talking about? Excellence, washing dishes, cleaning floors, cleaning ashtrays maybe. What is excellent? Well, I learned because he was a human being of excellence. He was a man of total integrity and excellence. He would have never entered a restaurant unless he looked perfect at the time, and so on. And if you allow me to finish that story, it takes a moment here. But once a week, typical German upbringing, I went to hotel school. In the meantime, I learned slowly from this man who was an example of excellence. That's typical. Once a week, you go to hotel school, and where all the kids from the region come. After 2 years, the teacher said, write me an essay, 3 pages, what you now think about the hotel business. I go back to work and I see the maitre d' approaching a table that night. And I realized the guests on that table were proud that he came to them. Now, wait a minute, that's a reversal. We are the servants. And when I contemplated that night for the essay, for my essay, and for the first time I realized that I could define myself in life. It's not the world who defines me unless I let them define me. And he defined himself as a very fine gentleman. That's why the guests were proud when he came to them. And I said, wow. So I named that essay which I wrote, We Are Ladies and Gentlemen, if we live up to it, if we define ourselves as such. We can do that at work, anywhere. We are, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. I made that the motto of Ritz Carlton, and I was operating founder of Ritz Carlton. We started a new company, and I made that the motto, and it became, in our industry, world famous. We are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen.
I love that. I love that so much. And just to put this in context too, a little bit more about your story, there was no fine hotel in your town, right? Like the idea.
There was no hotel in my village.
There was no hotel. Okay.
I'd never seen a hotel. I'd never been in a hotel. Nothing. I must have read something about it. I don't know. We discussed that with my parents many times and never could really come to conclusion where it came from.
Well, you were meant to do that. I think that's clear to me. And so this motto, you're right. This motto of we are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen, it really elevates the identity and the status of everyone serving in the hotel industry and certainly in the Ritz Carlton. I'm curious, how did you all go and incorporate that into the culture of Ritz Carlton? I wonder if you could take us back, because I was actually learned about you when you were interviewed on the Andy Stanley Leadership Podcast, and then I went and got your book and really enjoyed it. And he talks about how he was able to observe you teaching people. Originally, it was some of the folks in the organization, and then you actually taught a separate session with the managers and the leaders. But I'm just curious, how were you able to incorporate that motto, which is a lovely motto, into the culture of Ritz Carlton?
Well, I break the relationship of the organization with the employees who make the organization is threefold, in my opinion, very strongly. It would take long to explain them all, but number one is the selection of the employee. If you want to have a great organization, you have to have great employees. Number one is the selection. Already in the selection, we said, don't come to work with us, join us. We look at our people that work with us as ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. But that means we expect you to behave like it. That's not only how we respect you, but that's also what we expect from you. Managers, we told the same thing. And the manager, that means you respect your employees as ladies and gentlemen. So that's the first step where we brought it in. Then they had the orientation. So the first time they come to work, we made it very clear. The first day, we only explain them who we are. And I said, the first thing we're going to say again, don't work for us, join us. Here's our vision. Our vision is to become the finest hotel company in the world. And we want you to join that vision. That's our purpose. I not only want to give you a job, I want to give you a purpose. And you come here not as a servant. We are not servants. We are ladies and gentlemen. Our profession is service to ladies and gentlemen. The only one that can make you a servant is you, by creating mediocrity and sentence yourself to be a servant rather than being a ladies and gentlemen, and so on. We repeated that ongoing and reminded them of that ongoing. So it is the groups where you impact the employee is during the selection already, during the orientation. That's a key element which people miss altogether. Companies miss it. And the third, what do companies do in orientation the first day? I'll tell you very simple. The new employee comes in, Bill. The new waiter comes into work. I explained in the book. That's how it works. I see many companies. It doesn't have to be a waiter, it can be anything. Comes to work and said, Bill, and the manager makes the stupid team speech without giving an objective. How can you be a team without not having an objective? The whole meaning of a team meaning having a common objective and helping each other toward the objective. But that's not given. But we're a team here. And then fill out those papers and so on. Now, Bill, work with Joe over here. He knows the ropes. Happens everywhere. Maybe you're not in a rope business, but somehow Bill, the other guy knows ropes. That I don't get it. I mean, it happens all the time. And instead of explaining, the people have a right to know who you are the first day. What's your heart? What's your soul? What's the customer? What the customer expects from you? How should you behave in it? Aligning people. That's alignment. And every company talks about alignment, and there is none. That's just, come on. I work with companies that where the CEO wrote a book, Our Most Important Assets, Our Employees, and I know for a fact he gave a damn about them. He treated them like just a tool. It's ridiculous, but you have to make clear in your orientation, that's not who we are. And then ongoing have a relationship and a leadership where people are part of something. The number one part they should be part of is the vision of the company. But so many companies don't even have a vision. Come on, where do you going to take your vision? What's the purpose? I was proud to give my employees something higher than a job. I gave them purpose. That means the vision of the company to become the very best. But I told them at the same time, what's my motive and how it relates to their motives, to have opportunity, to be respected, to be honored in a business, to be honored as a human being, to be defined as people of excellence. All that has to happen in the selection, in the hiring, and in the orientation. And then it has to be maintained. That's leadership. Now, see, the difference, everybody talks about management leadership, but what is this? And what an alignment? Oh, there's another buzzword, alignment. Oh, alignment. Okay. Please forgive me that I'm cynical, because I just come back from a meeting where I experienced that again in a company. That's why. If you picture on your left over there are many people over there. That is the market that you market or your potential market for your product. And over here on the right, there are a lot of people. Those are your employees. Now, if I run a good company, I know what my market expects from my product. That expectation I understand. Now I make sure that my employees understand what my customer, what my market expects. Make sure that is starting alignment. At the same time, I have to now, as management, create processes, systems, measurements, and controls, so to be sure that happens. Leadership creates an environment in which the employees want to do that. Now they're aligned, they know what the customer wants, they know what the company is, they know the expectation, and now you're aligning them. Now they're aligned. They also know the benefit they gain if they do it right. Now you have leadership and management together that creates a great product. That's what it's all about.
And what was your vision at Ritz Carlton?
Well, the only reason why when I joined that company, it was not called Ritz Carlton, it didn't have a name. We just had 2 hotels in construction. But the reason why I took a job, and I was a corporate vice president for Hyatt with golden handcuffs and anything you can imagine, I was very successful in that company, in that wonderful company, I have to say. But I left because I was told in that new company, I can run the operations and create a company. And I thought, okay, I'm going to join and create the finest hotel company in the world. The vision was we will be the finest hotel company and the finest brand in the world. And 10 years later, we were.
And you talk about that a lot in your book about how kind of the 4 questions to maintain that vision. And you talk about 1, strive to inspire, 2, don't settle for less, 3, let nothing cloud your vision, and then 4, always look to improve your vision. What are some tips you would give to leaders about not just creating your vision, but how to really just incorporate that vision into the organization and repeat it?
Well, the first incorporation is to be sure that the vision that you establish, like in our case, to become the leader in the hotel business, you have to, if you're an honorable and moral leader, you will question yourself, number 1, is that good for all concerned? Is that really of great meaning for the investors? Not just answering yes, but why? The same thing, is it really, this vision really good for the customer? Why? Is it good for the employee? Why? Is it good for society as a whole? Why? And if the answer is yes, in all cases, unquestionably, really agonize about it. Now, it is incorporated into everybody in that moment. And then you, the leader, have not more rights to compromise it. But you have to make sure that you communicate it and invite people to join this. Make sure that you let them know. Look at the millennials, what's the difference with the millennials from where I was? Well, you say, first of all, millennials say, do it my way. I went to McDonald's and said, take a number 1. You go and say, take a number 1, but take 2 slices of tomatoes and half a pickle and do this. That is millennial. But at work, the millennial says, what's in it for me? I thought so too, but I was afraid to ask. But so why are we upset about that somehow? In the contrary, we should be glad. I will tell you what's in it for me. If you join me, you are here for a purpose, and that purpose is good for you. And I touched on it earlier. My purpose, and here's my motive. I hire you and I said, join me for the purpose of becoming the finest hotel company in the world. And here's why I want to do that. That means we're defining ourselves all as fine, ladies and gentlemen. You do too. That means we're going to grow. That means opportunity for you and everybody here. That means also you have more income. That means you're honored. That means everything for you. Now you know what's in it for you. So I connected you to the vision and to the motive of the vision, which is the issues that you're looking for. What's in it for me? That has to happen.
Yeah, and it seems to me that a good vision, really, it inspires people. It's something that they want to aspire to. It inspires the entire team and organization.
Exactly. A vision is not something you can do. A vision is something you wish to do, you want to do, you dream about. It's something beautiful.
Yeah, it gets you excited.
It gets you excited. It is worthwhile to go to work for it. I'm not going to go and play football. I'm going to go to become Super Bowl champion. My goodness, that is a huge change. Why not doing that in any little work that is being done?
And going back to the maitre d', Carl Zeitler, you talk about how he not only did he inspire, but he also held you to high standards.
Yeah. And let me tell the rest of the story on that one. Before I left, and as I left on, after 3 years, I went on to work in Switzerland, and then I worked in various other places. And so he made me look in his eyes and said, now promise me you never go to work. Promise me that you always go to work for excellence. Let me take that forward. Now I went to work. I worked in Switzerland, worked Holland America Line, went back to Switzerland, worked in Paris for nearly 3 years, worked in London for a year, and then I got an offer to work in the US. So I go to the US, with the intent. I was on a changing time. I was 25. I said, now I'm going to go for a year, maximum 2. I'll have to make sure that in those 2 years I get promoted to the next level, supervisor somewhere. Then I go back and finish my career in Europe. Ended up in the Ritz Carlton, in the Hilton in San Francisco as a room service waiter. It was very clear I was the best room service waiter there. There was no question about it. I knew the chemicals of that. I learned the chemicals of food, the beverage, how it goes together. The rest of the waiters were order takers and deliverers of food. So I knew the next opening in that, and I saw after a few months a supervisor got promoted to restaurant manager. I said, wait a minute, there are 4 supervisors here. Pretty soon somebody else get promoted. I will get that job. That was very clear that I would get it, because also the room service manager was German. So I'm German, he's German, I'm a great waiter, I will get that job. And sure enough, a few months later, the job became open, and I didn't get it. And that was a major ego blow, and my ego and so on. And all I could think of how stupid management is, and no good, and I should look for a different job. But I kept on working, and it took me a few months to recognize the other guy deserved it more. I was pretty young. I partied a lot at the time. I came 5 minutes late, only 5 minutes sometimes. Big deal, right? No big deal. And you could see, not from 100 feet, from 100 meters, you could see that I was tired. And when the manager asked me to do some side work here, like folding napkins, why me? Why not the other guys? The guy that got a promotion walked in the morning smiling and said, good morning, everybody. When the manager asked for something, he said, I'm happy to. He deserved it more. That's when I went back to my lousy little room, furnished room in the Tenderloin district in San Francisco. It looked bad then, it looks worse now. And I talked to my maitre d'. Now, he had passed in the meantime. He had passed on. He didn't show up as a ghost either, but I talked with him. The first thing is I apologized. I told him I went to work. I didn't go for excellence. I went to work for work. And I apologized, and I told him, no matter what, it will never, ever happen again. And I wrote it on the mirror where I shaved. Go to work for excellence, not for work. I went to work. It went his teaching kind of went away. I had worked in the finest places in Europe, absolute finest hotels in Europe, but I went to work. And then I promised myself I never have gone, and my career took off like a rocket ship. And I promised myself I'll never do a job unless I can be the very best in it. And that's it. And finished. The rest is history.
How do you talk that kind of gets at holding yourself to high standards, making sure you show up not just to work, but to do excellent work. But it also sounds like he, as your leader at the time, he held you to those high standards. So it's about holding yourself to the high standards, but also holding other people. How do you think about that?
Very, very clear. Well, if you're a leader, you have to have that responsibility. You see, for example, I said before, if you run a large company, you cannot mentor each person there. I had 25,000 employees, but nevertheless, I was as a leader in the 2 areas where I was in charge of. That's the vision and the standards of the organization. And I knew I had no moral right to compromise it, because I knew it was good for all concerned after all. In that moment, when I had come to that decision, carefully think about it, agonizing about it, then I knew I could not compromise it. I had no right to compromise it. So the standards were set, but the constant communication to the company, who we are, what we think, that they're part of the company for a good reason. That constant communication has to be there, of course.
And you talk about in the book how you would have not just, I don't think it was just daily meetings with the team. There would be meetings for every shift change where you would.
Well, I wouldn't, but the message of the day was communicated. Let me explain that. It's pretty important for you if you run a department or a company, it doesn't matter, or yourself. First, you lead yourself, of course. But we had established we want to be the leader in the world. And then we said, what will it take? In what areas must we be superior to the competition if we want to be the best in the world? So we identified 20 points that we knew we must do superior. So we teach those 20 points the second day of hiring. The first day we just talk about the alignment and the behavior in our business. The second we're teaching those 20 points. And from there on, in every shift, we repeat one of those points. Today, it may have been point number 12. Simple point, but very important, and the way it was taught and so on. If a guest asks for direction, do not point, take them there. So, and what we taught then, that is the point, but then we taught once on the way there, create a relationship. Say, are you a hotel guest? And if they say yes, say, I hope you had a chance to try our restaurant. Everybody compliments the food. Relationship, but selling at the same time. Mm-hmm. Beautiful little conversation. So that's number 12. In 20 days, number 12 will be explained again. 20 days later. So constantly we keep those 20 points, which we know will make us superior. We keep them alive in front of mind. Mm-hmm. And today, number 12 would be taught, if that's the day of the days number, in every hotel around the world. This way too, also we had the same narrative in every hotel around the world, consequently the same culture. We also read a letter done always or something where guests complimented that issue. So the same conversation is taking place in every hotel around the world.
And I could see some leaders hearing that and thinking that's overkill. Like that, are you doing that every single shift? Like, man, that's just. But you insisted upon that. Yeah,
and well, my managers also told me that's overkill after a while. Mm-hmm. They were embarrassed to do it again. So I got them all together and said, all right, okay, does anybody in the room who doesn't know what Coca-Cola is? Nobody raised their arm and said, so Coca-Cola knows that everybody knows what Coca-Cola is. So I wonder why they still advertise. Because they know you have to keep it front of mind. Mm-hmm. And if those points make us the best in the world, why wouldn't we keep it front of mind non-stop? So
that's so good. Yeah. And I think what I think about my team. So I lead a team of lawyers and paralegals, and mm-hmm. I have a Monday morning meeting with all of them. And that's a really important meeting for me because I know that the same person that left the office on Friday is not the same person that's sitting in that meeting on Monday. They've experienced their mind has been elsewhere, and now we've got to bring them back, and we've got to put, like you said, something on the forefront of their mind. I often talk about teamwork or some focus for the week or our mission or our vision. So I think that's really important for leaders to appreciate that. It often feels like you're repeating yourself, but you're repeating yourself for a reason.
Yeah, well, sure. And in fact, I always encourage repeat. Pretty soon people will do it. And in fact, the reason why you want to, on Monday morning, get them together, because as a leader, again, that's what I'm saying, I own the vision and the standards. And on Monday morning, I have no problem to say again, now we are here for this meeting in order to make sure we focus on the vision of the company. The vision, and whatever we do now, if it doesn't bring us closer to being the best in the world, we shouldn't be doing it. We should be doing something else. Everything we do has to lead forward, to move, to make us the best in the world. And if somebody did a job that wasn't so good, I asked, tell me, will that make us the best in the world? I kept that alive. okay, non-stop, because I knew it would be good for all concerned. That was I owned that. So I also own the standards, because the standards, being very high, will make us the best in the world. Those are the two things that I owned.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I've heard you talk about how that becomes that filter for everything you do. You're sitting in a meeting. Why are we in this meeting? What's the purpose of this meeting?
That's right.
What are we trying to accomplish?
That's it. If it doesn't bring us closer to the objective, which is good for everybody, well, we're wasting our time here.
I want to ask you about results, because results are often, we talk a lot about servant leadership in your book. Ken Blanchard writes the foreword, and he talks about how you are like the true servant leader. But you got results too. And you took time to figure out what should we measure. And I think sometimes when we think about servant leadership, that can feel very mushy and, hey, we take care of people, but any good leader is also getting results. And so I'm curious if you could, if we're kind of have some leaders out there who are thinking, okay, what should I focus on when it comes to measuring our results?
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was on a number of boards. I still am, but practically every board I have been in my career on, there's quite a number. When they have a board meeting, those important, smart CEOs that sit in the room, what do they talk about? They talk about cash flow, money, a new venture, new brand. They talk about everything, but they don't talk about what makes money. Okay, they're not talking about employee satisfaction. Somebody may make a speech because they write a book about employees, but they don't talk about it. They're talking about the customers. They're not talking about what the customer likes or don't like. They talk about another program, yes, and all kind of money things, but never about what really makes money. And that is disturbing. I make sure that you concentrate on the stuff that makes money. I measured, and I knew, look, when we started in the beginning, frankly, I was a micromanager a little bit. I looked at everything. But as we grew and went into another continent, on the end we went 5 continents, and mind you, in every continent we were the absolute leader. So much so for cultural differences that we love to talk about now. I mean, come on. I had the best hotel in Africa, the best hotel in Asia, the best hotel in Germany. Had nothing to do with it. Had nothing to do with it. They're all human beings, and you treat them with respect and dignity. Those human beings, and they all really want to do good. So what did I measure? I measure customer satisfaction. How many percent of the customers want to come back and want to recommend us? Net promoter score, the user, and so on. Okay, user word. That's what I look for. I looked at every day, every hotel. Now, at the end of the month, I made a decision about that. And I set an expectation on that. I'm in charge of the standards. 92% top box it had to be, minimum. And then employee satisfaction was the other measure. The daily economics, of course, I have to look at that. What happened? And my future indicators. Future indicators for me, we have a system of figuring out if my indicators for individual reservation or group reservations up or down. I looked at that every day. And then at the end of the month, I had a composite. End of the month, I talked to anybody who went over the measurement point, under the measurement point, I talked to. If they went well over, I talked to them too. I said, how do you do that? Man, you're great. So that's it. So very few measurements. I have 5 measurements. That's all. That's all. But it encompassed really everything. So but once I saw a red flag on one of them, and my threat to the hotels was very simply, if you stay under 92 top box intend to return, if you stay under that for a couple of months, I will move into the hotel and fix it. You have to stand by and do it. Nobody wanted that.
Horst is moving in.
Yeah.
Well, I think so for the leaders listening, I think we're seeing a trend here. So you're creating clarity around. You've got the vision, and it's a filter for everything. You've got these priorities, these principles that you're repeating, and then you have these very clear measurements. And you're not measuring everything. Not everything is important, but you're making it clear this is what's most important. This is not just what I'm focused on. I'm also focusing on this for how I rate you and evaluate you, and maybe even come move in if you're not doing a good job. And so I think that's so. And I'm curious. I read something in your book about how when you focus so much on customer satisfaction that you would give your employees a $2,000 budget to go and make customers happy. Is that true?
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I empowered the employees to make, if they have encountered dissatisfied guests, that they can make a decision up to $2,000 to move that guest into a zone of loyalty rather than dissatisfaction. We have to understand that there are three types of guests. There's the one that is dissatisfied, who are, ladies and gentlemen, managers, understand the guest, the customer that's not happy with you is going to be a terrorist against your company, period. They love to go on the internet and destroy you. Can't afford that. That's why, and now of course the next level guest is the satisfied guest. They can go next door if there's a better deal. And then there is the loyal guest. The loyal guest, what does it mean? That means they trust you. That's why they're loyal. They have developed trust in you. And we know, by the way, and that's very important, and I know I'm not giving you an answer yet, but what's very important here is pretty recent surveys is the guest that feels loyal to you, that means they got good service, good relationship. It's relationship that creates that trust, not a product. And the guests that got good relationship and feels that you serve them well are willing to pay more for the same product. 70% of the market says so. But guess what? Millennials, over 80% say so. So you better pay attention to that. You better pay attention, because the only millennials pretty soon. The rest of us are dead. Okay? So those, it's true. So pay attention. 80% are willing to pay more if you take good care of them. So that is why you have to work on that. You have to work on this on this customer loyalty issue and pay attention to them and make sure that they're happy and well. So it is not just serve them, do what they want, but caring for them. That is what that is hospitality. And in any business, hospitality, some people say, I'm sorry, I get totally away from your question. You have to repeat it. In any business, even if you're business to business, there's still somebody in your business that deals with the human being in the other one, which creates the opinion about your company. So it's relationships. So you have to tweak the relationship piece of the human beings that you have working for you. What was your question?
You're all over it. No, well, specifically, let me be more specific. Is it true that this $2,000 budget?
Yeah, okay. So being scared that I create terrorists, I said, okay, you are empowered now. Now, which created nuclear bomb? And I said to every employee, you can spend $2,000. Not what I said. I said you can spend up to $2,000 to keep a customer. Now, there's only one or two cases when they spend that much. The rest of them just bought breakfast. Here's the guest that is very upset. I give that as an example. Comes in the morning, and the busboy said, "Sir, I hope you had a nice day." And he said, "I didn't. My TV didn't work." In that moment, the busboy owns the TV, and he is. And they were all certified every employee how to handle situations like that. First is listen carefully, empathize, apologize, make amends, and delight. So now he listens, he empathizes, he apologizes, and now he says, now he's empowered to do something. Now he says, forgive me, sir. I'm happy to buy you breakfast now. The Basco. Wow. And then he was able to also now take the next step. If he knew the guest was still staying in the room, to send them a note and say, with cookies and saying, I just want to apologize one more time.
Wow.
Believe me, that guest wasn't a terrorist anymore. He became ambassador.
Absolutely.
Of course, the busboy now also had to, and we had a system, report the situation so it gets corrected right away. There's all systems, and you have to work on the end. No matter what you do, you have to create processes so to be sure it happens. That's management.
I love that. Well, Horst, I know we're running out of time here. One of the things that I often say at the end of the show is life is short. Let's make it count. And it goes back to what you talked about with being intentional. And I know in 1992, you're in the middle of your career. You're obviously doing very well in your career. You've got some young children, you're married, and then you have a health scare. And I'm wondering if in the time that we have left, if you could just kind of tell us about that briefly, and then just kind of the big takeaways for you and how that's changed the way you move or live moving forward.
Well, things were going, we were voted #1 in the world and blah, 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 everything. We give each other a high five and so on. I had a doctor's appointment and had an operation, and he said, well, you have a cancer that always comes back within 10 months, and it's always fatal. And I had 4 children, the youngest 1.5, 5, 9, and an older one. And I couldn't, and wife couldn't leave them alone. I mean, for the first time, no matter how much we know that, but because of the world and the egos and everything, it just doesn't really sink in that we are not in charge. And I accepted that somebody higher is in charge. That was my #1 thing. I accepted that. There was nothing but a decision. Everything in life is a decision. My decision was, I accept this, and I will live according to that. I mean, we may all make decisions. I mean, I'm married for over 40 years, but I'm still in love with my wife. That's a decision. And it's not a feeling. You wait for the feeling. No, I make the decision for the feeling. But in that case, as I said before, our destiny depends on the decisions that we make. In that case, I made a decision, I will be a believer. That is a decision. I have a friend who is an atheist. That was his decision. Well, it's all decisions. Doesn't matter. But my life changed. Everything looked different. Everything looked better. People looked better. And I knew that everybody is a creation and live according to that. It impacted me dramatically. Life is not the same anymore. Believe me, after you being told you're going to have 10 months about to live. I decided, I was recommended to go on heavy chemo to try and avoid the cells that are in me from spreading to a snowstorm. That was the word. But otherwise it will come back everywhere. And I decided not to go to chemo, but went on an unusual diet. And because the guy that created diet said, if you go on it for a year, you're going to live. So this guy said, you're going to die. And he said, so I decided to go with him. What an easy decision.
Easy choice, yeah.
And sure enough, after a year, no cancer. So he said, if you do it one more year, the cancer will never come back. I did it. I never came back. I made a speech about 3 years ago, I think, and John Hopkins. And I was sitting afterwards with the chief oncologist, and I told him I had a cancer. And he said, no, you did it because nobody has survived it yet. And I said, well, I did. And he said, well, 22 years ago, that was better, difficult analysis, and today you didn't have that cancer.
Mm.
We agreed I would send him the slides, and he called me back and he said, gee, I didn't know anybody survived it.
Wow.
There you are. But
it's a miracle.
Those things are miracles, and miracles happens all around us. We just don't see them. And again, even that was high intent. I want to live. Easy in that case, but we should always have high intent and go for it. We should have a high intent for ourselves, for our families, high intent to have a great marriage, high intent for our children, high intent for our departments, high intent for our jobs, high intent for our country. I mean, and then we have to do something about it. Not just making speeches about it, but we have to actually apply. Think about the outcome, think of what's good for everybody, and not just do. But the problem is our high intent good for all concerned? And that's the issue today. That's the issue in society. It's good for that one person, but is it good for all concerned? And the real morality lies there. And I think, if you have the moment that I had, you come to the point you include others in your high intents. Because not only you have that higher being that created you, but that higher being created others too.
I love that story, Horst. And I love your entire story. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for writing this book. I encourage everybody to go check it out. And I'll put show notes for people to connect with you for this episode. So thank you so much, Horst. I know you got to run, and just want to thank you again for joining us. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thanks, Horst. Have a great day.
Thank you. Real pleasure.
Take care.